Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Harry Lausaniziris and my YouTube channel grecochess. We're continuing the coverage of the online grecochess tournament that's taking place in the platform of chess.com. And one more game has been completed, and we're going to share it now with you. We're going to tell you what happened in that game. But first, let me start sharing my screen with you. You're going to see with the white pieces is Boris Alexandrovich Peasants, and with the black pieces is MGC 89 from the first group, first qualifying group. Once again, we have a total of 16 players participating in 4 groups of 4, and from each of the groups, one player is going to qualify for the final. If there are no ties, we're going to have 4 players from each of the groups for a final round. If there are ties and we have more than 4 people qualifying, then we might have semifinals. But let's see what's going to happen. And as I mentioned, Boris Alexandrovich Peasants has the white pieces and MGC 89 has a black. You see that the black player MGC 89 has a higher rating than the white, and thus is a favorite. But let's see what actually happened in the game. White starts. Stand away with the e-pawn, and black replies with a French defense. Pawn goes to e6. Second move for white, pawn to d4, and white occupies, has 2 pawns in the center. This is the ideal setup. Until now it's book theory, but black is going to deviate by playing the h-pawn. And white starts having an advantage. You see that from a 0.4, just because the white has the white pieces, now white's advantage becomes 0.7. Not a good idea to push the h-pawn unless you have to in the beginning. White sends the bishop to d3. Excellent move, as you see, the handshake that you see, not the handshake, the thumbs up. Of course, the best would have been the knight to c3, but white is doing okay. Black will send the knight to c6. Just a good move, just his check mark. White sends bishop to e3 and black pawn to a6. The two sides start little by little developing their pieces, pushing pawns to control as many squares as possible. White knight to e2 and black pawn to b6. This is inaccuracy. You see here with a question mark exclamation point, and this makes white's advantage go up to 1.2. You see in the bottom side, bottom left, if white has advantage, 1.2. If black had the advantage, you would have seen it here. White castle short side, and black develops bishop to b7. Once again, inaccuracy. For the computer would rather have the d pawn go to d5, and white has advantage of 1.4. White sends a knight to d2, inaccuracy, rather push the pawn to a3, because otherwise the knight might come to b4. Yep, that would have been the best move for black, to send the knight to b4, but the green arrows show what the computer thinks is the best move. Instead, they push the g pawn to g5. And white's advantage becomes 1.8. Of course, what black is trying to do is to throw the pawns towards white's castle king, and if possible, mess up with the pawn structure in front of the king. Since black has not castle yet, that is their thought. White develops pawn to c4. The computer would rather have it go to, let me give a look. Yes, pawn goes to c4. Just a good move. Computer would rather have it go to c3, so it protects the d4 pawn once again. But c4 takes more space. Maybe that was White's thought. Now black can send a knight to b4 and attack the bishop on d3. Usually, not only that, the bishop on d3 is unprotected. If white is careless and they lose a bishop, there is nothing they can do to get back the knight. What can they do? They can perhaps remove the knight on d2 that covers the queen's coverage. Even send a pawn to c1, but these are not good moves. Yes, you take back the knight, you don't lose material, but you don't want your knight to go backwards. You don't want the other knight to go backwards. So, but let's see what white will do. White finds the best possible reply. You see the star here, you see the move coinciding with the arrow, sends the bishop back to b1. So black cannot take white bishop. Not only that, this bishop is controlling squares like c2 and d3, where the black knight could go, or continues defending the pawn at e4. How black will reply? They continue pushing the pawn to g4, hoping to make holes in white's defense. But this makes white's advantage go all the way up to 3.0. Black has not castled yet and has developed only the bishop and the knight, while white has developed both knights, the dark color bishop and even the white one. It's still in the first rank, but it controls the second biggest diagonal from b1 to h7. And white attacks the black knight, the only piece that black has really developed. Okay, also the bishop at b7. Knight goes back to c6. White gets more space by sending the pawn to b4. Pawn to b6 for black to stop it before it advances. Pawn to c5. White's pawns start being quite powerful, not only occupy a lot of space, but also control some crucial squares like d6. Black sends the knight back to e7. White's advantage by now is 2.9. White wants to expand more space. Pawn goes to a4. Black sends the knight to g6. White takes the pawn on b5. Black takes it back. And now white must take the rook because the rook on a1 was unprotected. Of course, he could have moved the bishop from b1, but then the queen would go on a1, and not sure how good would it be. In any case, the computer thinks that white taking the black rook with his rook is the best answer. Black will take it back. Bishop to d3 for white, attacking the pawn on b5, and black doesn't see it. So white has an advantage of 3.5. Of course, if white takes the pawn on b5, black will take on e4, and white cannot take it back. If the knight goes here, bishop takes the knight. Let's see what will happen. White first touch, exchange the pawns. So hopefully after that, they'll be free to get the pawn on b5. They take the other pawn on e6, and this really exposes black king. You see, white gets advantage of 3.1. The black king has not yet castled, is in the middle, and without too many pawns in front of it. Black decides to counterattack. Bishop goes to g2 and threatens the white rook on f1. How will white react? Computer gives an enormous advantage of 3.1 for white, and white decides to ignore the threat of the rook, send the knight on g3. The computer thinks that this is a brilliant move, and the comments of the computer says, ignoring the threat on the rook, a difficult move to see. White has advantage of 2.4 after this brilliant move. And let's see what black is going to do. They'll take the rook. White has advantage of 2.5, and it seems that everything is going great for white after move number 19, but let's see what is going to happen on move 20. White wants to take the bishop back, and how does white do it? Knight from d2 goes to f1. Disaster for white because this gives mate in one for black. You see the two question marks in the red circle. This means blunder. And let's see why this is a blunder. I can tell you in advance, queen to g2 for black is checkmate. But will black see it? Yes, MGC89 saw it, and that of being down quite a significant amount. Let's see how much it was, 2.5. Yes, from being down 2.5, which is quite a significant advantage. In one move, everything changes, and black MGC89 wins the game. It's the second time we see a player being having a large advantage and then one moment's carelessness and gives the opponent a checkmate in one. Which is a lesson for all of us, no matter how much ahead you are, no matter how wonderful things are going to be, make sure you don't give opportunities to the other player, especially not a mate in one. I've both lost and won games like that myself. But let's see now, what does the computer think about the overall game? We're going now to do the analysis. I'm going to share the screen once again. Let's see how this will go. Here we are. The computer thinks that white Boris Alexandrovich peasants played with accuracy 68.5, while MGC 89, the black, with 72.6. And the ratings were quite low. 900 for white for Boris Alexandrovich peasants. Well, given the fact that his rating is 816, it's a little bit above the average rating, while for peasants whose rating was 1182, it's a little bit less. In the various categories, the irony, white had one brilliant move, and it was move number 19, exactly the one before the blunder of move 20. None of them had great moves. Best, 3 for white, 5 for black. Excellent, 3 for white, 1 for black. Good, 8 for white, 7 for black. Book moves, 2 for white, 1 for black. Players relatively early left the book. Inaccuracies, 2 for white, 5 for black. Mistakes, 1 for black. And blunders, the last move of white, the one that decided the game. And after this game, let's see how things are going in the various groups. And first of all, let me apologize. This was group 2 and not group 1 that he played. Group 1, things are the same. Maxim Govorukha has 2 wins, started with 2 wins in 2 games. He's a favorite, but still everyone is in the game. Hunting Achievements has not completed any games, so if Hunting Achievements wins quite a few games, may have a chance. Butterfly has 1 win, 1 loss. U863032 has 1 win, 3 losses. And let's see what happens in group 2 that we just saw now. Barak 7 and MGC 89 have until now 3 wins in 3 games. They have beaten Andrea Mart because Andrea Mart closed her account twice. And they beat once Boris Alexandrovich Peasants, but the games between them will be very crucial, as of course, especially in case have 1 point each with each other, the last remaining game with Boris Alexandrovich Peasants. Group 3, where I participate after UV 14-15 timed out all of the games. Then then Abu Talebe, myself, Dahari, and Delane are leading with 2 points in 2 games. And everything will be decided on what we do in the games between us. Group 4, it's already over. My skin from Italy has already qualified for the final round. This concludes the coverage of the grecochess tournament. If you want to see overall, out of the 48 games of the first round, we have completed 30 and 18 games remaining. And now, assuming we have 1 player from each group, we're going to have another 12 group games, the final. Let's see how things will go. I'm very excited about it. I'm Harilos Aniziris. This is grecochess. Thanks once again to the players participating. Thanks to the viewers that are watching it, to the subscribers, the likes, the nice comments. We'll see you again after more games complete. I'm Harilos Aniziris. This is grecochess. Ladies and gentlemen, goodbye.